Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Andy. I usually do sex education videos on this channel more or less every single week, which is a really good reason to stick around because you might learn something, and I try to make it fun a lot of the time, so stick around. So this weekend I went to the Sexplain conference. Sexplain are an organisation who have facilitators and sex educators, and they go to schools and they provide services, and they've had an annual conference for the last 2 years. So this was the second annual conference for Sexplain. This year it was themed around sex education for the 21st century, specifically around sex education to do with digital means. So for example, sexting and porn and things you might find on the internet. And one thing which was brought up a lot during the day was people's rights to images that they send to other people. So for example, you're in a relationship with somebody, you might send certain images, nudes, sexy images, images which are private and personal to you and your partner. When you send those images, they are meant to be for your partner only. And you don't expect that these images will be shared with anybody else. Or at least you'd hope that. At least that's what I would do. Not share those kind of images with other people. It's not my image to share. It's like somebody telling you a deepest, darkest secret. It's not your secret to tell everybody else. They've shared it with you for a reason, right? But nevertheless, you see things like what they call revenge porn. So if you've had some particularly sexy images taken and sent to your partner, or maybe you've taken them together, that doesn't mean that either one of you has the right, if there's both of you in these images, that either one of you has the right to share those with other people. If you sent somebody images, some sexy images, that doesn't mean they have the right to share it with other people. So you see with revenge porn is people that have broken up, potentially pretty unacrimoniously, and as a revenge, for whatever reason, for some revenge, for payback, for blackmail, whatever, you sometimes see those images posted on the internet or shared around, and it's a form of revenge. And because the images are pornographic in the wider sense, or maybe in the truer sense, but mostly I mean in the wider sense here, it's known as revenge porn. Now, it's a specific offence. Back in 2014, a law was passed by the government. It was the Liberal Democrat Conservative Coalition at the time. They passed a law to specifically ban sharing of images of people that might cause distress or alarm. Or I should say, in order to cause distress or alarm. That specific offence has been on the statute book, like I say, for about 5 years. There have been a couple of prosecutions. It's been tested in court relatively well, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. It happens loads. And the problem with the law is that for a criminal case to be brought, it has to indeed be targeted, and it's specifically to cause distress to an individual or a group of people. But get to a criminal level of culpability is really quite difficult. It's quite difficult in a lot of murder cases and assault cases and all the rest of it. Never mind cases where it's not necessarily certain the motives of somebody before they've done it. But perhaps we should be looking into something which needs a slightly less level of proof and evidence. And one of those things could easily be contract law. Now, I'm not saying that you can currently use contract law for this purpose, but we can take the concepts of contract law and apply it to images that you shared with your partner and so forth. So, for example, you can reserve your rights on an image, and maybe you do. Maybe it should be implicit that this is the case. So you should reserve your rights on an image and license those rights to the person that you've sent it to. Why is that important? Well, if you reserve your rights, that means that the person that you've given the license to can use that image for their own purposes, for their personal purposes, but what they can't do is disseminate that. They don't have a license to distribute it. They don't have the right, and if they don't have the right, technically, if they distribute it, then they are in breach of contract. That was rather dry, but you get my point in this. It's very similar to consent, isn't it? Consent is for certain things. If you give consent for sex, it may well have conditions on it, such as it has to be sex with a condom. It has to have only penis and vagina sex, so not anal sex, not other types of sex. Or you can maybe only blowjobs, maybe only mutual masturbation, maybe only these things. You also have the right to withdraw that consent at any time. So by building up that kind of consent culture, we can also apply it to when you send these sexy images. So just as I was saying with contract law, you can say that when you send somebody these images, you are only giving consent for them to use them for personal use. That is all you're consenting to. You're not giving them consent to send those images to other people, including your friends, including on the internet and so forth. This is a particular problem in schools, actually. So those of you that have watched Netflix's Sex Education, which I hope is a lot of you, you will remember the storyline about It's My Vagina, where somebody had a photo of their vagina distributed among people in the school on various social media outlets. And although it was anonymous, of course the person who had the photo taken knew it was them. There was a lot of trying to find out whose it was, a lot of people saying that it was a certain person's, so other people got involved. Obviously people denied it, but of course enough people knew for it to be a problem for the person who actually their picture was their vagina. This is a good time to point out that they meant vulva, but it's you need to use the language that people know in a television show like that. So it all culminates at the end of the show where there is an assembly about this, and obviously the advice is not to take them, which is not the advice you should be giving people. The advice isn't not to take it in the first place, victim blaming. It's not to share it around. So in this assembly, lots of people stand up and say it is their vagina. This is not just people with vaginas, but people with penises too. It's a big I am Spartacus moment, right? To show that we shouldn't be shaming the person who took this picture. It's not a problem they took this picture. That's not the thing which they should be shamed for. Too often, people are shamed for taking these pictures. You see on the news, you see on talk shows, people are told that they shouldn't take those pictures. They should avoid taking pictures which may be embarrassing to them later in life, whether that be in the very near term or in the long term. Maybe they want to be a politician. I don't see why, if a politician had taken pictures of themselves, sexy pictures of themselves 10 years ago, that disqualifies them from being a politician. At least I'd hope not. I certainly don't understand why that would be a problem. But people are being advised that they shouldn't be taking these pictures in case it comes back to bite them in the future, rather than going after the people who are sharing these images without the consent of the person in them. And I understand that people think they're being nice, that they're trying to give out good advice, but the advice is rooted in society's culture, a culture of victim blaming and a culture against someone being sexual, especially young women. So if from early on everybody is aware, implicitly hopefully, but maybe explicitly to start with, that their rights to images that they've been sent stop at them. They do not have the right, when somebody's being privately sent some images, to distribute those images unless they have got those rights, they've got that consent from the person that they belong to. It's not true that possession is 9/10 the law. Just because you have something doesn't mean that you own it. At best you have a license. You don't have rights to give it to other people. I'd love to know what you think about this. If you've got any comments at all, leave them down below. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. You can do it just down there as well. And I make videos on sex education topics every single week. So subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Oh, and click the bell so you don't miss when I next upload. You get notified of that. And I will hopefully see you next time. Bye-bye.